Hi, this is Chris with Fischer Workshops, and in this video, learn how to build your own designer long wallet. For your consideration, here are a couple design options I came up with for this particular wallet pattern. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you for watching. To learn how to cut your own tracing patterns, just click on the link above. Using a scratch-awl, trace the pattern onto a piece of leather. If you plan to carve and tool the center, then trace the interior as well. Using a sharp knife, carefully cut out the pattern. Now add the interior trace pattern and trace. I used the last trace pattern to draw a border line between the vine art and the basket weave. Once you've transferred your art onto tracing paper, cut it out and trace it onto your leather. Dampen the leather with water and wait about 5 minutes before beginning to trace. With a swivel knife, carve out the traced border lines. Take your time tracing the interior border. It's easy to make a mistake here. Line your tracing pattern up precisely and begin to transfer the pattern onto the leather. With the swivel knife, carve out the pattern. After you've finished carving, you can begin to stamp out the image. If you plan to dye the leather, then first paint the background tooling in a color of choice. After finishing the background, I then applied a light brown antique stain. Before the antique stain dries, I then wiped any excess stain with a damp sponge. Now I'm going to use the trace pattern again, then cut out the exterior decorative coat. When you've finished this piece, set aside a cut of 4x4 cm circular piece of leather, about 2 mm thick. First, trace a stitching groove around the circle, then second, use an edger to round the edges. Now let's go ahead and apply a stain to the exterior coat. I use EcoFlow Professional Water Stain. For best results, don't apply too much stain at once and apply in a circular motion. Now let's do the same for the circular piece of leather. Now, in addition to my antique dye, I want to apply a light amount of the water stain for a tonal effect. When you're finished staining the leather, apply a couple of coats of sheen. I used a clear matte sheen. Now use an edger to prep the edges for the burnishing. When you're finished, put a little dye on the edges. Now apply a little sheen to the leather. Now apply a little burnishing gum to the edges. Use an edge slicker or a professional burnisher to polish up the edges. Do the same for the circular piece. Use a stitching chisel to punch the stitching holes around the circle. Before installing the concho, let's add a little super glue so it stays put. Now use the pattern to trace out where the concho will go. Roughen the surface a little so the adhesive will stick. Apply a little adhesive to the exterior coat and the circular leather with concho. Now let's do the same as we prep the tooled leather for the exterior decoration. After about 3 or 4 minutes, the glue is ready and we can attach the pieces together. Before we glue the last part, let's first put the rope loop on. With a stitching chisel, punch holes around the interior decor and the concho. Now let's saddle stitch the areas we just punched. For added strength, use a double loop around the rope loop. Punch a hole for the eyelet and attach it with the setter. Now we can braid a leather rope and attach some beads to it. Start by cutting some thin strips about 100 centimeters long and 2 to 3 millimeters thick. I use 9 millimeter thick horse leather for this part, but other suitable leathers could also be used. Cut 4 strips and dye and finish the strips if you need to. I use my stitching horse to clamp the pieces while I braid them into rope. I applied a few beads made by Brighton Jewelers for aesthetics and value. Once the beads are on, then just make a knot at the end to finish. Now attach the rope to the wallet. Tie a knot and cut off the excess leather. Let's get started with the wallet's interior by first tracing all the pieces onto the leather we plan to use. For this wallet, I'm using 9mm thick leather. For a tanned natural finish, I'm going to apply horse oil to the leather before cutting out the pieces. Apply a little slicking gum to the reverse side of the leather and burnish with a piece of wood or glass. Use a stitching groover to mark your stitching lines to the wallet pieces. Align your card slots and use a stitching chisel to punch the stitching holes out. Repeat the process for each piece. Clamp the first two pieces into the stitching horse and saddle stitch together. Tie the stitch off at the end and move on to the next piece. Repeat this process until all the pieces are stitched together. Now we can prepare to stitch the card slots onto the bill compartment. After stitching the card slots to the bill compartment, we can attach the bill compartment's interior tab. Carefully skive the edges of the tab. Glue the tab onto the top of the bill compartment's interior. Punch stitching holes along the top. Next, punch stitching holes along the side of the gusset that will be stitched to the bill compartment. Before stitching, glue the gussets onto the bill compartment. Now prepare to glue the edges of the card slots to the bill compartment. Lightly sand the edges so the glue will hold better. Next, prepare a stitching single-hole hand chisel plier. I use this tool when punching through multiple layers of leather to make sure my holes line up perfectly. A stitching chisel will be less accurate. Now saddle stitch the gussets in the tab to the bill compartment. Use a piece of fine sandpaper or a rotary tool to clean up the edges. Round the edges with the edge beveler. Apply an edging gum to the edges and burnish with an edge slicker or a Pro Edge burner. When you are finished, the seam should be invisible and smooth to touch. Now, cut a stitching groove into your exterior wallet with an edge groover. Glue the exterior wallet and the wallet interior piece together. Next, glue the bill compartment to the wallet interior. Do this for both sides. Using either a single head chisel plier or a multi-head plier, punch the remaining stitching holes. Make sure that you are aligning the tool neatly on the exterior stitching groove with the interior stitching line. To finish off the edges, I'm going to use a rotary tool with a fine grade sander and a Pro Edge burnisher. With a little more effort, a piece of sandpaper will also work, or a sanding stick like this. Before burnishing, bevel the edges with a beveler. Apply slicking gum and burnish. If you don't have this type of tool, a simple edge slicker can also be used. When finished, you should have a perfectly smooth edge with a beautiful shine. Now take 4 strips of thin leather, about 120 centimeters long, 4 millimeters wide, and braid together to make a biker chain. For other tutorials on this braid, just do a YouTube search for a 4-part round braid. So your braid doesn't unravel, tie it off at the end. Here's how I make the tassels for the rope. Now I'm going to wrap leather around the tassels to secure it and finish it up. Now, cut off excess leather and we're done. Now, let's see the finished product.